Great. Now, what's going to happen next is we're going to invite a variety of speakers up one by one. Tania is going to go first, and then it's going to be Ganesh, and followed by Tracy. And one by one, they will come up, have a kōrero, and go and sit down over there. And then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A session with the three of them. And you can submit your Slido questions if you'd like to. That would be great. Quick introduction. Tania is from Ngaituhoi, from Waiaho, which is apparently a suburb of Aotearoa, and a social change leader. She seeks to create opportunities for circular and regenerative Indigenous-led solutions, and is a social entrepreneur who's been doing a lot of mahi at the Southern Initiative in Tāmaki Makaurau. Tania Pouwhare, ho mai te pakipaki.
Karanga te rā, karanga te pō, karanga atu ki te iwa o Matariki. Hurunga, hurunga, hurunga. Ko te mea tuatahi, ka nui te mihi ki te mana whenua o te takiwā nei, ko ngā te whātua o Rākei, kai te mihi ki a koutou. Tuarua, ngā mihi mahana ki a koutou, e huihui mai nei I tēnei ata. Ko Tania Pouwhare, tōku ingoa no Ngaituhoi, he kaimahi au huki, kai te kaunihiro o Tāmaki Makaurau I te tima community and social innovation. So kia ora and good morning everyone, my name's Tania, and it's a real privilege to be watching this kaupapa and Amotai flourish over the last few years and few months in my role at the Southern and Western Initiatives in the Community and Social Innovation team of Auckland Council. Thank you to Amotai for allowing me to come and inflict myself on the good people here. And I promise to keep it short because this kaupapa needs the new net to go fishing, and you will want to hear from and strategise with all of our amazing speakers that you will hear from today in order to take this kaupapa and indeed Amotai to its next horizon. But while I do have the opportunity of a captive audience, I just wanted to touch on some of the policy and system shifts that would really help to accelerate our supplier diversity journey. And that story starts back in 2019, when a small group of us had the pleasure of meeting the formidable Harriet Michelle, who was the former president of the US National Minority Supplier Development Council, which is the genesis of supplier diversity and development, with our dear friend Laura Berry, who's the chief exec of Supply Nation in Australia. So here we were with these two intermediary tuakana and us very, very much the taina, and they graciously and abundantly shared their wisdom with us, and they continue to do so today, for which we are so grateful. But their challenge to us was this: what took them decades to achieve, we here in Aotearoa should reach in a mere few years. The Manuka branch was laid at our feet, and there is no greater impetus than now as we stand on the precipice of economic uncertainty. But Māori and Pasifika peoples know what's in store. It's a steep decline followed by a long, slow trudge back to the starting line, and this is entirely predictable. For Māori, we've been experiencing economic shock therapy since the 1850s, and the pattern of decline and this long, slow trudge back doesn't change. So it's time for us to double down and place a big bet if we want to short-circuit that entirely foreseeable impact of a COVID-induced recession. And we need to do so at pace. And that really does mean all of us. We all have a part to play. And here's some of the things that we've learned through bitter experience, but also by listening to others who have been doing this for a long time and taking that on board. And in particular, I'm speaking to my colleagues in the public sector, but these are principles that can be transferred across wherever you work. The first order of business is to acknowledge that this kaupapa of supplier diversity is a demand-led exercise. Demand doesn't create the opportunities. There is no opportunity for our Māori and Pasifika businesses. In other words, what we put out as the demand side into the market is what we will get back. If you send hesitant, poorly defined requirements out into the market, guess what kinds of responses, tender responses, you will get back. The key message here is that you set the tone for the entire process. So be clear about what you want and send very clear signals from the outset. And the best example I've ever seen is my Waste Solutions colleagues, who back in 2012 published the first waste minimisation and management plan. And in that plan, they clearly described their desire to create a supplier base of social enterprises into the waste industry. Then they went on to establish an innovation fund that then could support startup social enterprises. So when that tender came out, the first tender came out for community recycling centres in 2014, no one should have been surprised to see that price was only 25% of the weighted attributes. And they were asking, where does your profit go? How are you going to contribute to local economic development? How are you going to employ people who are disadvantaged by the labour market, etc.? In Aroha, my Enviro Waste, the Waiuku Men's Shed teamed up with Raglan Extreme Waste, and they won that contract because they were the best tender. And all of the community recycling centre tenders have so far been won by social enterprises. But if we want world-class results, we're going to have to put effort in and detangle our own systems. And it is simply unacceptable to think that we can just put something on GETS and our job is done. If we want to create change, and you'll hear lots of amazing stories about this today, you're going to have to level the playing field, and that will require effort, tenacity, and some bravery on your part. Thinking about, is that retainer or that bond really necessary? Is this a made-up risk? Is it a substantive risk? Is this really going to happen? Because these are the types of things that are material barriers to our businesses being able to fairly compete for work. Many of you will be pioneering this mahi in your organisation, and you will encounter a wide range of excuses about why it can't be done. It's par for the course, I'm afraid. But one of those will be the stereotypes, as Ari mentioned before, about Māori and Pasifika businesses being risky bets, 1- and 2-man bands, lacking capability, because that's the only thing that is in the public imagination of Māori and Pasifika businesses. And of course there are challenges with capability, and that's true of all SMEs. But my experience is that these are grossly overstated. And when you hear them, you need to dismantle every single myth and stereotype as it arises. To lift up to the macro, a permissive policy environment helps, but that's not what gets results, because culture will eat strategy for breakfast every time. People, you and I, are the key to the success of this. If we at the Southern Initiative had have depended on the various, and we have got, oh my gosh, around this kaupapa alone, at least 6 policy documents. If we had waited for that to transform the system, we wouldn't be sitting here. Because that's not what makes the difference. This is a campaign of winning hearts and minds, and the greatest advocacy is achievement, and the fuel for that is willpower. And what Australia has shown us is that accountability matters. When the Indigenous procurement policy was introduced, it had a bit of a false start. One of the things that changed its efficacy was that the then Minister, Nigel Scullion, I don't know if you've ever seen him, he's a bit of a character, but he rang every single chief executive of every single federal department and ministry and held them personally accountable for meeting the policy. And then he published their results on the website of the Deputy Prime Minister and Cabinet. Attempts to game the system by ordering one chair were dealt with decisively. Ralph G. Moore, who lives in the US, is the godfather of business-to-business supply diversity and development, and Amotai are working with him and his team to adapt and adopt his 5 levels. This is a really clear set of standards for the demand side that enable excellence and the ability to measure yourself against the best. That's what we're aiming for here. It's the gold standard in benchmarking, and it's really straightforward, and it's a really, really useful way to recalibrate your systems. And it's something that we'll be able to share with our buyer members in the near future. And I'll end here, and this is only a fraction of the cultural mindset, policy, tactical strategy shifts that are needed. But remembering back to that whirl, that challenge from Harriet and Laura, it wasn't just to Frey, John and myself, it was to the entire country of Aotearoa, it was to all of us. And if I can leave you with one thought, after more than a decade in and around this issue, both here and in London, it's this. Social procurement, supplier diversity and development are merely tools, and therefore they are only as good as their users. And remembering the whakapapa of supplier diversity back to the civil rights movement. They are not the end goal, they are the vehicles, the tools for building a fairer, more equitable and more just economy. And I'm just so excited about where this Amotai, this swell, this movement is going to go next. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.